taken them to his hometown of San Juan, Puerto Rico. Bo Vasquez is a longtime friend of Perez Olivo dating back to the 70s, when Vasquez was a court reporter in the Puerto Rico Federal Court, and Perez Olivo was a young attorney just starting out.
He had a gift, his voice, his diction. It got to the point, whenever Carlos was in trial, people could fit into the courtroom. They wanted to see him in action because he put on a show. He was an actor.
And as his legend grew, so did his clientele.
Whenever he would go to visit his clients in prison, they told him that they had other inmates that wanted to use him as an attorney, and they wanted to dispense with the services of their prior attorney.
It's a level of success he'll need to repeat upon his return to the island 15 years later. Vasquez says that Perez Olivo's wife, Peggy, has become accustomed to a certain lifestyle.
She had to have a certain type of a car, she needed to have a cleaning woman, and she had to have a house of certain dimensions.
Both my wife and I kind of believe that you never knew when life was going to end. So we lived as well as we could.
It means the pressure is on Perez Olivo.
He felt that he had to get a lot of cases, he had to get a lot of clients, he had to charge them higher fees, and he had to deliver.
From what Vasquez remembers of the Perez Olivo of the 70s, he thinks delivering will be no problem for the mesmerizing courtroom performer. But Vasquez soon discovers that the Carlos Perez Olivo who left the island more than 15 years ago is not the same man who has returned.
Some time goes by, and I was approached by many of these attorneys that told me how disappointed they were in Carlos and how ineffective he was and things that he was doing. He was falling asleep in court.
And his clients are outraged.
He was taking the money and not doing the work that he was supposed to have been doing.
One client claims to have given Perez Olivo $30,000 to work on an appeal, which Perez Olivo never files. He simply takes the money and breaks off all contact. And that client isn't alone. 3 more clients issue complaints, and the Puerto Rico Federal Court decides to step in.
But there was a hearing held before a magistrate, and they cited several cases, and they recommended to the judge that he be disbarred.
Instead of answering the charges, Perez Olivo agrees to surrender his license in Puerto Rico and returns his practice to New York. But a change of scene doesn't mean a change of method. Some clients in New York say he's just back to his old tricks.
What do I think? He is a lowlife.
Angie Stone is a widow living in Westchester County in New York. In 2001, her housekeeper, Tranquilina Leguizamon Diaz, an illegal immigrant from Paraguay, is arrested in a sting operation for trying to buy a visa illegally from an undercover agent. Diaz is eventually convicted of bribing a public official. Before she is sentenced, she decides to change lawyers.
She heard of somebody called Carlos Perez Olivo. I wasn't altogether comfortable with that, but I called Mr. Olivo.
Diaz and her husband gather their entire life savings, $13,000, to retain Perez Olivo. But it's not enough. Stone agrees to put in another $7,500 herself. Eileen Shapiro is the attorney who will later take over Diaz's case.
He didn't do anything. He didn't say anything. He didn't do anything. He didn't put in a sentencing memorandum. It was like he wasn't even present.
He does bother to file a notice of appeal after sentencing, but then lets the deadline to file the appeal itself pass, and the court dismisses it.
It was repellent to me that somebody would do something like this to somebody that was essentially a helpless person.
For Shapiro, there's only one explanation.
He didn't want to write a brief. It's not an easy thing to do, and he took his money, he spent his money, and now it's time to write his brief, and he doesn't want to do it.
The most common complaint against him was that he neglected my case or he didn't do enough.
Andrew Bratton begins gathering complaints about Perez Olivo in the early 2000s. as part of his role as Deputy Chief Counsel for the New York Supreme Court Disciplinary Committee. He says all the complainants have one thing in common.
Every criminal defendant is faced with deprivation of civil liberty. So by definition, every criminal defendant is scared. And in these cases, not only is the criminal defendant scared and vulnerable, but the families of the criminal defendants are scared and vulnerable.
While Tranquilina Leguizamon Diaz is sitting frightened in jail, waiting for some kind of news or progress, worrying about the welfare of her two young children, Carlos Perez Olivo does nothing. Well, not nothing.
We traveled a lot. I had a lot of cars. I like cars. We shop. We eat at good restaurants. We believe that you couldn't take it with you, so you might as well enjoy when you could. And as it turns out, I think it was not such a bad philosophy.
Not if you can get away with it. To Perez Olivo, $10,000 or $20,000 means a family vacation in Europe. But to some of his clients, it's their entire life savings. And one of those clients catches up to him. The Sanabia family had given up on ever recovering the $10,000 that Perez Olivo had walked away with 5 years earlier. But suddenly, fate intervenes.
My older brother was at the courthouse and kind of remembered his face. And he had never met my older brother. So he went up to him and said, "Oh, are you a lawyer?" And he said, "Yeah." So he gave him the business card.
After nearly 5 years of searching, Belsabel Fernandez has found the man who took her parents' $10,000 and files a complaint with the New York Supreme Court Disciplinary Committee. When American Greed returns, living off his client's backs is about to catch up to Carlos Perez Olivo. Will he be able to get by without them?
His credit card debt was mounting. He had no apparent source of income.
Or will it lead him down a path where there's no turning back?
Are you driving his car right now? I'm just on my way to do this.